Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Morrison, Realtor with Veris Property Group, and I have with me this evening Greg Lanham, and he is with the Whitestown Fire Department. So, Greg, please introduce yourself and let us know all the details regarding your history with Whitestown.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm glad to be a part of this. Jessica, thanks for inviting me. My name is Greg Lanham. I'm Deputy Chief of the Whitestown Fire Department. I've been with the Whitestown Fire Department almost 4 years full time. I was with Pike Township Fire Department for 26 years prior to that. And I've been now with Whitestown, coming up on 4 years and just enjoying it, having a great time. Very much enjoy the community, very much enjoy the department. If you know much about Whitestown, it's booming. So it's growing quite fast. The fire department itself is growing quite fast. We just put in a brand new ladder truck in service today. So we're excited about that. So we have a lot going on.
That's wonderful. What's been your favorite thing so far about working with Whitestown?
Well, I would say it's the people I work with. I very much enjoy my coworkers. We work hard, but we love to laugh. So we joke around quite a bit, but the department in whole, everyone there loves their job. They work hard and they want to be good for the community. So that's enjoyable. Going to work every day is enjoyable. So it's a great thing to be able to say that I love my job and I love going to work.
That's wonderful. And so for those who couldn't hear for like 10 seconds, the feed kind of broke up, but he just really loves the work environment and it's very fun. So Greg, the reason we are talking tonight was because Whitestown did a great job of starting to promote the Whitestown, or not Whitestown, sound like a broken record at this point, but the Fire Safety Month, or you guys are heavily focusing on marketing for how to prevent a fire and help protect your family. So with the holiday season coming up, there's certainly, especially with it being dry and not having a ton of rain recently, there's more opportunities for fires to occur. So I'd like to kind of just dive in and let you kind of take the lead on, how do we set ourselves up for success when it comes to maybe everyday fire prevention?
Okay. Well, there's a couple points that you mentioned I'd like to touch on. First, it's Fire Prevention Month. And typically for the fire department, we love October. We love to be able to get out into schools, daycares, churches, to get out into the community and talk about fire prevention. We have all kinds of coloring books, flyers that we hand out. Of course, we have our plastic helmets that we love to give the kids. They love to have those, but it's really about us getting out and talking to the kids and the families about fire prevention. Well, with COVID, we are limited. So we can't get out in the community like we normally would. So everything has been slowed down in that aspect. So as a department, we're looking for ways that we can get out and educate the community. And we've done that by making some videos. And we've put those videos, I believe it's 5 videos we put on our website, which is wfdfire.org. And you can go there and right on the front page, we have multiple videos with, if it's fire prevention to Halloween safety, just safety overall for the home. So we're trying to be able, instead of us going out to the people, that they can come to us basically via our website. So we're doing that to try and help. I'm sorry, I think I got off track of the question you asked me.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm actually working while you are talking on putting that link in the comments. So for those who do want to watch those videos, that is readily available. But yes, the question was, how do we set our homes and our families up for success to prevent a fire?
Right. I'm sorry, got off track.
It's all good.
As I was getting ready for this evening, I was doing some research and going back and just kind of looking at some different things on fire prevention and home safety overall. And when I go back and look at these points, it really just kind of jumps out at me that so many things are just really common sense. And I know that's a term we use, and for me, one thing may seem crystal clear. Gosh, why wouldn't you do this? And for other people, maybe it's not. So I think it's really great that you wanted to do this webinar tonight, but we can go back and just kind of revisit these things that we all learned as kids. We know these truths of how to be safe in our home, but we slowly kind of change things, or we get away from them, and we don't think they're a big deal until they jump up and bite us and they get us in trouble. So I think it's great that we're going to go through and talk about these. So what I would like to do is, now I'm a novice on Zoom, but if you'll give me a minute, I'm going to try and share my screen and walk through some safety tips on a website. So here we go. Give this a shot.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. So where we're going is the Red Cross, American Red Cross website, which is redcross.org. And this is a really, really good website for safety in general, for many different things, but for home safety, it's a really good website that they share a lot of information. So as I scroll down, we have obviously home fire safety and some basic tips that we all need as a refresher. Install smoke alarms. Jessica, you and I were talking about this as we were preparing. You know, a lot of people build new homes now, and the smoke detectors are a part of the home, which is great. They put them where they're supposed to be. They attach the correct smoke detectors where they're supposed to be at. And typically they are hardwired. And what that means is they're connected to the fuse box. So you don't have to necessarily worry, oh, is the battery dead? If the home has power, then the smoke detectors have power. Now, the trick to that is most of them will have a battery backup. So why that's important is I can't tell you how many times through my career I went on runs that people call 911 because their smoke detectors are chirping. They can't figure out why, because they're all chirping, not just one of them. And the way these smoke detectors are put together is they all have a battery backup in them, even though they're connected to the fuse box. So if the battery goes dead in any of them, they all chirp. So then you say, well, Greg, how do I know which battery to replace? You don't. So at 2 in the morning, when we would go on the fire truck to go and help someone whose batteries are out, or a battery is out, we typically, we just replace them all for them, because it's too hard to just replace one and stand there and wait to see if it's going to continue to chirp. So the reason I bring that up is smoke detector safety. So let's say your home doesn't have a smoke detector in it, or you bought an existing home and the smoke detector seemed old, maybe looks a little old. They're fairly inexpensive. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Target and you can buy a smoke detector for $10 to $15. They're fairly inexpensive. And I know, in the time of COVID, we're all watching our budget, right? So, I say $15 doesn't seem very, very much money, but and this time right now, it can be a challenge to come up with that. So, but it's very important. Smoke detectors, we all know this, save lives. They absolutely do. I can tell you story after story of runs I've been on where smoke detectors have saved lives. So they're very important. So smoke detector tips are that we're kind of talking about is the battery, obviously. You want to replace the battery at least once a year. The way what we would do at my family is we would pick a birthday, whether it was my birthday or I had daughters, or it was one of their birthdays. We put it on account the change detector battery, and we change them once a year. So when that would come around, we would change the battery. The smoke detector itself, and this is by the smoke detector standards, they last for about 10 years. So if you move into a home that's an existing home and the smoke detector looks a little old, or if you don't know how old the smoke detector is, you can take it off, you can take it down. Sometimes the date will be printed on it, stamped on it, but a lot of times it's not. It's best just to get a new one. Like I say, you can go and buy one for fairly inexpensive amount. So you might say, well, how many do I need in my home? Well, by the standards, let's scroll down, I can show you. Smoke detectors missed it. Just a second.
Yeah, that website has a lot of really good resources on it just from you skimming through the page.
Right. So we're going to go back and talk and kind of touch on this. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There it is. Smoke alarms. Here we are. You want to have a smoke detector on each level of your home. If you have a ranch home with a basement, you should have one on the first floor and in the basement. Obviously, if you have a 2-story, you want one, no matter if it's a single story or a 2-story, you want to have one by the bedroom or the sleeping quarters. So you might have one by the kitchen if you have a ranch, and then one down in the hallway by the bedrooms. I've seen people that put smoke detectors in their bedrooms. And that's not a bad idea. It just can get expensive, but that's not a bad idea. It can't hurt. Even with homes that have smoke detectors that are powered by the fuse box that are linked together, it's not still a bad idea to have a battery operated one that you put maybe in your attic or in your garage, just in case. It can't hurt. We've been on many of fires that lightning strikes in the attic, and they don't know until smoke comes into the home. So if you have a smoke detector that you can put in your attic, it's one way to catch that quickly. Now, of course, you want that attic to be an attic that you can access, because you've got to get up in there and change that battery. So you don't want to put it somewhere that it's really hard for you to get in there, because it'll be 2 or 3 in the morning when it starts chirping. It's never during the day when you're awake. It's always in the middle of the night when the battery runs out.
From personal experience, yes.
Right.
Yeah. And it's always good too, I think, when you first purchase a home, if you have large vaulted ceilings or higher ceilings that, it's not like something that you can get up to with a chair. You'll want to have that ladder handy. As common sense as that sounds, it's just funny how if you don't think about it or you don't plan for it initially, it gets put on the back burner of not urgent, not important. And therefore, when it does become important at 2 in the morning, when you're trying to sleep and get ready for that 6 a.m. wake up call, you don't want to be through that.
No. And, I've seen people take batteries out of their smoke detector because they purchased a toy for their child, or they purchased something that needs that 9-volt battery. Because when I was a kid, there was a lot of different things that took a 9-volt batteries. Anymore, there's not that many, but smoke detectors almost all take 9-volt battery. It's not one that you have around, AA, AAA. You have a bunch of those in the house, but a 9-volt, man, when that thing goes out, you're looking for them. So people sometimes will take it out of their smoke detector thinking, oh, I'll just replace it tomorrow. Well, that's when the issue happens and you don't have a smoke detector because you took a battery out for something else. So we don't want to do that. So smoke detectors in general, the great thing about them, they'll come with instructions on how high to place them and where to place them. The thing you want to remember, like I spoke about with battery, is also you want to clean the smoke detector. I know that as another thing when you go, well, yeah, duh. But how often we just walk past those and we don't actually clean them. I sweep my house all the time, but it's not and I sweep it right under the smoke detector. But I've got to physically remember, I got to think about detaching the wand and sweeping around the smoke detector, because as everything else in our house, dust gets everywhere. Smoke detectors, the insides of the smoke detector are what picks up the smoke. If it gets full of dust or cobwebs, that inhibits it from being able to do the job. So we want to make sure that we keep that smoke detector clean. Sometimes we have to actually take it off the wall and clean the inside of it. But usually if we can just keep up with sweeping, and even if you just sweep it maybe every month, every other month, sweep around it, that's going to help significantly.
Yeah, and for those of you watching who are trying to implement what you're learning, I would just go into your calendar and, if there's a specific day that you do deep cleaning activities around the house, or, if that's not something that is entirely a ritual and it's more spontaneous, maybe you just make it every Sunday when you're prepping for the week. You have a recurring item that pops up. I know, like So we know when our recycling goes out, I have a recurring reminder that this is the one of every 2 weeks that our recycling cans go out. And I just have that reminder. And
Right.
so just put it in there in your calendar and then you won't forget it, because this is truly life-saving information without trying to sound dramatic, but
Right.
it's important.
It absolutely is. You know, with the technology we have nowadays, whether it's our watches or our phones, man, we can alert ourselves and remind ourselves for anything. And it's so easy and so quick. So you're absolutely right. Throw a reminder in there and just help, because I forget stuff all the time. But I throw it in my phone and I remind myself, and then it just really helps. As I'm scrolling down on this website, I notice it says replace your smoke alarms every 10 years, what I was talking about earlier. What's really technology detectors have gotten to where they come with a 10-year battery in there. Now they're a little bit more expensive, but if you don't want to be able to change battery every year, you can buy detectors now. The battery will last life of the smoke detector. So that's pretty amazing that they're doing that. And what's great about that is it's a reminder that when that alarm goes off, or I'm sorry, when that battery dies and it starts chirping that the battery's dead, you just take the whole thing down and go buy a new one. So you don't have to worry about how old is my smoke detector, how old is the battery. When that battery chirps, time to get a new smoke detector. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and for
And then
those who, I'm not sure if it's translating to Facebook, but sorry to interrupt, Greg. So for those who couldn't hear I think the Wi-Fi, Greg, I think it's on your end, unfortunately, is it's going in and out for some reason. And so just to summarize what I was able to hear through the headphones, Greg was just stressing the importance of changing your smoke detector every 10 years, because over the course of time, that technology will atrophy. And so we want to make sure that it is current and is going to best serve your family. Is that a good summary?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. And I apologize that I'm
okay.
having some technical issues. I didn't realize that was happening. So in the future, if I start cutting in and out, yell at me, I'll stop and I'll repeat whatever I just said.
I think sometimes, Greg, Wi-Fi is funny. Like you've been clear like 80% of the time, and then it comes and goes. So not sure why that is, but we'll work through it.
Well, I'm just gonna touch quickly on home fire sprinkler systems. Those are that's not something you see very often. It's again, normally it's because of budget. We all try to stay within our budget, and when you're building a home, to add a sprinkler system, it can be quite expensive. So but if you can afford it, and that is an excellent thing to add to your home. I'm trying to remember the exact percentage, but I think it was 90% of fires in buildings with sprinklers are put out by the sprinkler system. So if you have a home that has a sprinkler system in it and you have a fire, there's a 90% chance that sprinkler system is going to put the fire out before we even get there. It'll more likely put it out before it becomes a real fire, a real danger. But I just want to touch on those a little bit.
Yeah, quick question on that. So when I hear of a sprinkler system going off, is that if a fire were to set off the sprinkler system, does the sprinkler just go off in the one room that set off the fire, or does it go off throughout the whole house? And I'm sorry if that's a very novice question. I've just not had much exposure with them.
No, exactly. So no, that's a good question. So the way sprinkler systems work is a sprinkler head, which is, I'll scroll back out. That is what this is called, a sprinkler head. And inside of here is a fuse. You can, this bar that goes up, there's a fuse in there. So above this, there's piping that brings water to this head, and that's all being held back by this fuse. When a fire happens below it, it gets hot enough, the fuse goes away, which releases the water that comes out. It hits this, it spreads out. So to answer that question is, the only sprinkler head that's going to go off is the one that the fire is hot enough to remove the fuse. So typically it's just the one in the room where the fire is. Now, if a fire continues to grow and it gets to another head, that head will go off as well. But you know, in the movies and on TV, when someone puts a lighter under the sprinkler head, the whole building gets soaked, and
Right.
that's just not the way it is. It's great for the movies, but in real life, it's typically just one head. And statistically, one or two heads put that fire out. It's substantial amount of water that comes through that sprinkler head. And they really, really do their job. Sprinklers are an amazing tool.
That's amazing. Or it's funny that you say that movies illustrate that differently, whereas in reality, it's just, room by room as needed. But it makes a lot of sense, because I think when someone's evaluating, the purpose of a sprinkler system, like you said, those things put out a ton of water. So if there isn't a fire in a room, and, if you are under the impression that the sprinkler does the whole house, then you're essentially ruining your house,
right?
All over the place,
right.
where there isn't a fire. So that makes a lot more sense. And if those of you watching knew this ahead of time, then I'm just getting up to speed. But I think all of us just learned something, because like you said, the movies don't illustrate that.
That's a good point, though, that you brought up with causing damage in rooms where the fire is not. So I want you to help me to remember, when we start talking about fire safety later on, when we talk about when there is an actual fire, we're going to talk about smoke and what smoke does in your home, and closing doors and all of that. But that is definitely help me to remember that, so I can bring that up later. But because smoke gets out throughout your home, wherever the door's not closed, that's where smoke's going. So we want to talk about that, because it causes a lot of damage. So as I scroll down, the next thing we talk about with home fire safety would be fire extinguishers. So everyone knows about a smoke alarm, and we do know about extinguishers, but it's not as prevalent in homes as you might think. I love that you have your smoke detector setting there as a great example of a perfect size smoke detector for a home.
You mean fire extinguisher?
I'm sorry, fire extinguisher. Yes, you're right. Fire extinguisher for a home. So Jessica showed me her extinguisher a little bit earlier ago, and it is what's called an ABC fire extinguisher. And it is, and I'm going to see if I can't bring this up.
And for those of you wondering, it's this, the reason I knew what it was when he asked is it's right across the top, and it tells you each letter. And I'm sure Greg will explain this a little bit more here in a second.
So I brought up this picture of different types of fire extinguishers. So let me touch.
Are you trying to share that, Greg?
Can you not see it?
No, you have to switch. So we're still looking at the fire extinguishers page.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
All right.
It's all good.
I am as a novice.
Hey, Greg. Yeah. Can you plug your headphones in and out really quick? Let's see if that helps. No, let's just take them out for now. See if that helps. I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, that's better. I don't know why. Great. They just were freaking out. So yes, we can see the picture now.
Okay. So before I explain the different extinguishers, let's talk about why it's important to have a fire extinguisher. So we go to work, no matter where we go to work at, whether we go to Meijer to shop, or we go to Kohl's to shop, or Lowe's, or any of the stores we go to, or we go to work, throughout that structure, there are going to be fire extinguishers. Just like throughout the structure, there's going to be smoke detectors. These are two basic tools that we need to help prevent a fire, or to let us know that one has started. So the smoke detector is going to let us know that a fire has started. They obviously work best, or not best, but help us the most when we're not awake. Because if we were awake, we would probably smell the smoke or know that the fire has started. So smoke detectors are really important at night. But once the fire has started, we need to be able to extinguish that fire. And a fire extinguisher is an excellent way for us to be able to extinguish a small fire. Jessica's extinguisher she has there, I think, is probably a 20-pound fire extinguisher. It's an ABC extinguisher, and they're great to have in the kitchen. And if you can have 2 in your home, I'm not going to ask Jessica how much she paid for that, but I'm guessing it probably around $20 to $30. They're not real expensive. Much like a smoke detector, you can get them fairly inexpensive, and you can get them a lot of different places. But if you can have 2 in your home, it's great to have one in or around the kitchen, and then in or around like the garage or someplace that you might have an open flame. But the kitchen typically is best. And I say that because most fires in a home start in the kitchen. So having an ABC extinguisher can help with that. So what is an ABC extinguisher? So if you look down the middle of this, an ABC powder extinguisher, the letter on your extinguisher tells you what type of product it can extinguish. So it can extinguish a wood, paper, or textile fire. A B is a flammable liquids fire like grease, gasoline, any type of petroleum. And a C is a flammable grease fire. So if you have an ABC fire, you can put out most fires that are going to happen in your home. Now, if what you have is only an A extinguisher, you've already got an extinguisher and it's an A, or if it's a B, if it's an A or a B, I'm not saying they won't work, but on certain things, they're not best. If you have an A extinguisher, which is the main product in an A extinguisher is water. You would not want to put that on a grease fire, right? So if you have a kitchen fire, which typically kitchen fires are usually, they started with a grease fire, you would not want to use an A extinguisher on that. Best way to put out an A or a grease fire, Jessica, do you know? I'm putting you on the spot.
I think flour.
Flour is one way to do it. The best way would be to just put a lid on it. So if you're frying something in a skillet or any type of pan, just take a lid to that pan and put over the fire. And then once you put that lid on it, it will eliminate as much flame most of the flame that's coming out, if not all. Then you can reach around and turn the heat off. So you can turn that stove off. So now that way it doesn't continue to have heat going to it to fuel the fire. If you don't have a lid, let's say you're frying in a larger skillet and you don't have a lid that fits, a baking sheet, a baking pan will work. Anything that you can put over that's metal that will not allow the flame to come out and won't allow air to get in will put that fire out. So here's something that's really important, Jessica, that I want to touch on with kitchen fires. Any kitchen fire that you have, whether it's if it's maintained in your skillet or stays in your skillet, that's great, and you can get it put out. What you don't want to do is to try and pick that skillet up and walk it outside. I've seen many people burned or hurt trying to do that. So as you can imagine, if you walked out of your kitchen, you were cooking and you walked out of your kitchen, you walk back and the skillet's on fire. That's going to be pretty traumatic and it's going to be scary. So you want to try and get that out by putting a lid on it or using your extinguisher. Flour will work, but it's not as much of a guarantee as a lid or an extinguisher. But I've seen people try to pick the skillet up and walk it outside or put it into their sink, and that can be very, very dangerous. You want to call 911, get someone coming, because you know what? You can always disregard us. Call 911 and then put a lid on that or put it out with your extinguisher.
Yeah, that's actually,
Even if you do extinguish it, it's recommended to still call for us, because what we can do is we have, with technology, we have what's called a thermal imaging camera. We can come out and look at your cabinets. We can look at your walls and make sure that that fire hasn't extended further than what you think, because it can travel into walls and into cabinets and get where you don't know. But we can come out, make sure the fire's out. We can help you. If you've got your house or your apartment's full of smoke, we have fans that we can get the smoke out of your apartment or your house, and then we can help and make sure that that fire's all the way out. So, it's always good to call us. You know what? You pay for us. You've already paid to have us come help you. That's what your taxes are for. So call us and let us come help you. It's better to call us and not need us and disregard us. Or when we get there, you say, oh, hey, Greg, we got it. The fire's out. We don't have an issue. And we just turn around and go back home. Then it is an hour or two later, then there's an issue and you have a new fire. So always call. Never hurts to call.
yeah. So quick question, Greg, on that. I can hear some people be concerned. I mean, nothing in life is free. So as you said, the consumer is paying for this out of their taxes. Should they be concerned? Again, I don't have gratefully too much experience around this, but I could see someone being worried that if they made a call, that for some reason it could either affect their insurance, I guess only if they file a claim, but are there any kind of costs associated with having you come out?
The only time that there's a cost associated with the fire department coming to you is if it's an EMS run and we transport you to a hospital.
Sure.
That's obvious. And as far as the fire, if there's a fire, we don't charge for that. We come and put the fire out and do what we have to do to save lives and protect property. And unless, there's an issue that the fire caused damage, somehow we damaged our equipment. But that isn't, if I understand it, I don't believe, I'm saying that because I don't always work on the side that I would bill you. But that's still, we replace that. We don't charge you for that. If anything, it would go to your insurance, but no, there's not a charge for us coming out and putting a fire out. If there's a hazmat scene, there's a chance that there could be a charge for that. But again, that goes to insurance, and that has nothing to do with a home fire. But no, that we don't charge you when we come out and do things like that.
Yeah, I figured it's just always good to double check. And I think, help put any concerns or worries aside that might inhibit someone from feeling confident that they're not going to be surprised with a bill. I mean, as you said, there can always be circumstances, but for the main thing of what we're talking about, it sounds like, it's covered or insurance would be involved.
Right.
So you asked about the cost. So I just looked it up really quick. So I got this on Amazon. I put the link in the comments. Obviously do your research when buying home extinguishers to make sure that, it's a good one. I have not used this product, so I can't verify and say that it's tested and whatever. But if you are curious on what I purchased, this is a first alert. It's an ABC, and I put that link in the comments below this video. So
awesome.
All right. So I know we've got.
Before we get off of this, real quick,
okay.
While we're talking about fire extinguishers, we talked about the type of fire extinguishers and where you might want them. But the other part to a fire extinguisher is being able to use it. It's not, for me, I've been around them for almost 30 years, so they seem very easy. But what you don't want is when you have a fire or when there's an emergency, for that to be the first time that you really look at your fire extinguisher. So you've got your fire extinguisher there, Jessica. You can see that it's got a gauge on the front of it. And that gauge tells you if it's charged or not. So what that means is if you were to have a fire and you use the extinguisher, it's then not charged. So that needle that's pointing straight in the middle would go to where it's uncharged. So then you would know, now you'd be able to pick it up and tell it was a little bit lighter, but just in case, you want to have that gauge to tell you that the extinguisher is still good.
Hmm.
Your
No, no.
extinguisher is not a rechargeable extinguisher. So most extinguishers that the general public would go buy from Lowe's or Home Depot or Amazon or Target, they're typically not a extinguisher that you would recharge. At your work, at your place of business, or at a school or at a church, their extinguishers are rechargeable. At the fire department, we have at least once a year a company come in. They maintenance all of our extinguishers. They check them and make sure that all of the gauges that they're still charged. And if they're not, then we switch them out and get a new one in. Or if it needs to, they can recharge it there on the scene at the firehouse. But for us, for our homes, we're going to go buy, just like you bought an extinguisher that's not reusable. So it's a one-time use. So if you have a fire, a kitchen fire, a small fire in your trash can, and you use your extinguisher, you're typically, you're going to throw that out and go get a new one. Sometimes you can use part of it, but I wouldn't recommend going, well, gosh, I only sprayed it for a couple of seconds. I think it's still good. Well, we don't want to take that chance. They're really not expensive. So it's better to go get a new one and know that if you had a kitchen fire or another fire, that you have a full extinguisher to put that fire out.
So you're saying that even if I use this once for like 2 or 3 seconds, I would still need a plan to replace it because it's a one and done thing.
Well, the reason I say that is even though you use it for 2 or 3 seconds, you don't know how much. Your gauge will give you an idea, but you're not completely sure how much extinguisher is left in there.
I see.
And I wouldn't want you to bang or to feel that the extinguisher is full and you have another fire and then you don't put it out. You can't put it out because you're short. There's more come out of it than what you think. For us that we train on extinguishers all the time, we have a really good idea how much products inside of that extinguisher. So I may use it for 2 or 3 seconds, but I know that it's going to last a certain amount by how much I put out.
Yeah.
For novice or someone who doesn't use the extinguisher very often, you don't know. So just to be safe, it's better to just go get a new one and use it.
I think it's like it's literal insurance. We buy it, we hope we never have to use it. And our next webinar is next week with Mike McKeever in State Farm, and we're actually talking about insurance and all the questions you need to ask about that. It's a little plug for that. But this is literal physical insurance.
Right.
So,
well, make sure when you talk to him, and I'll tell everyone that lives in Whitestown who's watching, we just got upgraded on our now that's just jumped out of my head what it's called. We get rated as a fire department, and our rating can lower your insurance.
you guys are like 5 stars now?
No, it actually, the lower the number, the better the rating. So we just got rated a 2, and we were a 4. So, when you talk to your insurance, that's something that you can relay to them. It'll come back to me, and I'll remember what it is, and I'll relay it to everyone. But it's something really important that we worked as a department very hard to lower our rating. And that helps the community with their overall insurance for their residents. So that's something great that I wanted to pass on that we've done. Yeah,
that's a pretty fantastic achievement. My photographic memory is working against me at the moment because I remember that article coming out, and it was very, very celebrated by your local area.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great point. Do you know offhand like how much savings people could anticipate?
I don't, because it is different for each person. It depends on the structure they have, the size, and what they're insuring and what their insurance, amount is. So it would be different for each person.
That's a very fair statement.
So the last thing I want to touch on with the extinguisher, and then we'll move on, is the easy way to remember how to use an extinguisher is called pass. Yes. So if you look at your extinguisher, it's got a handle, and in that handle, there's a lot of times there's a cotter pin. It's up at the top, right by the gauge. It's where you would grab it to hold it. Oh. So there's typically a cotter pin in there that you can pick it up without it discharging anything. But if you pull that pin and squeeze, it will discharge the product from inside of the extinguisher. So that's called pass, which is P is for pull the pin. A is for aim low. So when you say aim low, you want to aim at the base of the fire. So you can imagine a skillet on your stove is on fire and you're going to have flames that are going up in the air. Well, you don't want to shoot at the top of the flames. You want to shoot at the skillet where the base of the fire is. That's why it says aim low, which is the base of the fire. Squeeze. So you squeeze the handle, which will cause the product to come out of the extinguisher, and you what's called sweep. So you wouldn't squeeze it and just hold it in one spot. You want to squeeze it and sweep back and forth. So if you can imagine you have a 12-inch or a 14-inch skillet, you wouldn't want to shoot it just right at the middle. You want to sweep back and forth. So that's a good way to remember. It's just called pass. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep.
Very good. It's easy to remember.
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's transition into something else.
Yeah. So for those who are trying to, absorb what's on the screen here, again, this is the redcross.org page, and there's a link we can also share in the comments for this with fire safety resources. There's plenty of videos and other tips. And we can always, circle back and do another webinar on another subject with this, Greg, come
Right.
closer to Christmas. But I do want to transition into, we are coming into holiday season. You mentioned Halloween earlier. What are some concerns or tips that you would give people coming around the Halloween holiday?
So that's a good question. So, you have your everyday normal life holiday safety, right? That we've had for all of our lives, the normal holiday safety. So it's always good to try and trick or treat when the sun's up, so that kids can be seen. You want to trick or treat if you can with a costume that you can know who your child is. Kids love to have masks on, and in a lot of the superhero movies, the kids have masks on, and sometimes that can be hard for them to see. As you can imagine, if you're walking with that mask on, the kids, maybe trip, or they don't see obstacles in front of them because they have a mask on, and they can trip and get hurt. And if you get separated from your child and there's 5 Ironmans out there, it's hard to maybe find that child. So if you have a costume that their face is exposed and you can easily see your child, it's good for them and good for you. Obviously, I hate to even talk about the candy, as in, when I was a kid, there was always an issue of, we got to be safe with the candy, but it still plays true today. Is it doesn't hurt to not eat candy while you're out trick-or-treating. Bring that candy home, get it out on the table and take a look at it, just to make sure everything's still good. It's good to have a flashlight, even though you're walking during the day, if you can, because what happens is we get away from our homes with our kids and we're having so much fun. And then all of a sudden the sun starts setting, and next thing you know, it's getting dark. So it's great to have a flashlight, A, so you can see, and B, so people can see you. If you can have some type of a flashing light on your child, some type of a safety light, that's always great. It just draws attention. In neighborhoods, kids get so excited, right? They can't wait to get to the door. They want to trick or treat. They're having fun. They want to get candy. And they sometimes will run out into the street or want to cross the street. Normally the kids are pretty, might be good about having safety first, and they'll hold your hand, or they'll look both ways. But man, on Halloween, once you get going, that kind of is out the window. So kids, you just want to be careful to be with your kids and be close to them. And if you're going to cross the street, it's just really smart to hold hands, or at least walk with them. Don't let them get ahead of you.
Do you have like a top 5 list of calls that you get on Halloween?
I don't. I honestly,
common
if I sit and thought about it, it's always funny. The same thing with 4th of July. I always get asked that question. Do you go on a lot of runs on 4th of July? Well, I've been a fireman for almost 30 years, and I've probably only went. Now, it doesn't mean they don't happen. It just didn't happen for me on my shift in my district. I haven't been on a lot of 4th of July runs either. but it doesn't mean there aren't issues. People get hurt, things happen, accidents happen. So, it's just smart, especially when we're with our kids. They're whom we want to protect the most. And it's a night of excitement and fun for them. So they kind of drop their guard. They're just out there to have fun and get candy. But we as parents have got to have our heads on a swivel and look watching for everything of what's going on, and just be careful. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So with, we've talked a little bit about, or alluded to, families with children. Do you have, in like 5 or 10 minutes, because we are coming up here on the hour, 14 minutes to go, what are some tips that families with children, the elderly, and with pets can incorporate today?
So some basic home safety tips. We talked about smoke detectors. We talked about extinguishers for kids. So let's focus for a minute with families with kids, especially young kids. It's been a while since I've had young kids, but I do remember, and we still, to this day, we really practice. We don't leave lighters or matches laying around. We're not a family that smoked, so we wouldn't normally have them laying out, but we do enjoy candles. But when the kids were little, we were very careful about that. If we lit a candle, we wanted to make sure it was up on a counter, up someplace tall enough that they couldn't get to it. And even when the kids were getting older, not necessarily teenage kids, but later years when they're in grade school, they get a little bit bigger, and we tend to think, oh, well, they're smart enough, they're not gonna mess with that candle. And it's just not always the case. And we don't want them to get hurt, and we don't want to cause a fire or anything like that. So it's just really smart to continue to watch and be careful with that. Keeping matches and lighters in drawers, to where where they're at. If you light a candle, don't leave it unattended. I could tell you story. I don't need to tell you stories, but there are, there are incidences where people walk away from candles, even adults walk away from candles thinking that they're okay, and they ended up not being okay because accidents happen, life happens. So just be smart with that. When we start talking about the other thing I want to touch on with people with families or with kids, because it's going to transition into elderly people as well, that we always had on our refrigerator, we kept a magnet that had our children's information in it. So it was a magnet that was folded and had paper that was folded up, and it stuck in there. And whenever we had a babysitter, we would show them on the refrigerator, if something happened, here is information on our children. And I think it's still important to do. You don't have to have it folded up. You can have it, just folded once to where that information isn't for anyone that walks in your home to see it. But it's good information to have, because if you have a babysitter that don't know your children, don't know their medical history, don't know their allergies, and they have to call 911 for a reason, for one of your children gets hurt, it's great to have that information there. Yep. For two reasons: that your babysitter can relay that via the phone when they call, and when the fire department or the ambulance gets there, they can hand them that information, and then all of your child's medical history, their medications can be on there, your contact information can be on there, and then we have that in our hands. We physically have it in our hands, and away we go, because we will take time to enter all that into a computer. But if we have it in our hands, it just shortens the amount of time that we might be on the scene, that we can get that child going to the hospital. Mm-hmm. Same with the elderly. It's really great for the elderly as well, because, and I'll use my dad as an example. My dad takes a lot of medication. Mm-hmm. And if I was with my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, what's all the medication you take?" He would sit there for a minute, and he might be able to relay it to me, but there's a good chance he wouldn't. So it's really good to have medication that's someplace that we can get to as a fire department. If we know it's on the fridge, we can walk in the door and they can tell us, for their spouse or partner, that hey, their medication's all right here on this piece of paper on the fridge, or my dad keeps it folded up in his wallet. So if something were to happen, he can pull it out of his wallet and give it to someone that it's trying to assist him. And that's just a good reminder. So those are a couple of things that we can do safety wise for the family and for elderly.
Yeah, I think that's great. You could almost take it a step further and have like a laminated card that you keep. And I mean,
Right.
it's sensitive information. So, you know, if your wallet gets stolen, that's, I guess, use that to your discretion. But I love
Right.
the preparedness aspect, because it's not, unfortunately, you know, if something like this were to occur, it's a matter of when. I mean, you know, I think I'd be curious what the percentage of families across the US experience some type of home fire, but you know, whether it's, you know, just a little incident or unfortunately something bigger where you lose everything, I think having a plan in place is still going to put you ahead, because, you know, when you're in the moment and that stress and that trauma is occurring, you know, what are your steps, or what do you know where that fire extinguisher is? Because I think a lot of times when we move or life gets busy, you know, you can just forget. And, you know, that first
Right.
10 to 20 seconds is pretty critical if there's a fire on your stove. So
Absolutely.
I love the preparedness aspect.
Well, Jessica, you're touching on a big portion that I completely forgot to get to. You know, we got on the smoke detectors and extinguishers, and you know, for families, practicing what you're going to do can mean all the difference. You know, if you play sports, you know, they say you play the way you practice. Well, you don't want to wait till game day to practice something. You want to practice it prior to that. You know, whether it's going up and pushing the button, having your kids with you and push the button on your smoke detector so they can hear what that sounds like. Because can you imagine at 2 a.m, if that smoke detector goes off, there's a good chance a child maybe has never heard a smoke detector go off. They will have no idea what to do or what that is. But if you sound it for them and let them hear it, they won't be afraid of it. They'll know what it is and they'll know what to do. You know, it's very important that we have a evacuation plan. So, you know, we talk about if you're in you could be in an apartment, you can be in a 2-story house, you can be in a ranch, it doesn't matter. You need to practice how you're going to get out of the home and talk with your kids about that. Draw it up. Have your kids practice drawing your home, drawing where their bedroom is, and then how they're going to get out of the home, and then do it. You know, have them tape that on their door, on the inside of their door, just like you would see at a business. And, you know, in my office, I've got an evacuation that shows how I get out of the building. Well, you know, have your kid draw your home and do that, and have it taped on the inside of their door. It's a reminder for them, but practice it. Have that meeting spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a good spot is your mailbox.
Yep.
But that's not always good for everybody. If you're in an apartment, maybe you don't have a mailbox. Maybe that's somewhere else. Pick a tree, a fire hydrant, something that's always going to be there. Don't pick a car that's in the out in the parking lot. If you're in an apartment, you know, pick something that's always going to be there and practice going to it. Once you leave, once you call 911 and leave, if you have a fire, never go back in. You know, I tell kids all the time, you know, we have pets. We had a dog for 16 years. We loved Cody, and my kids loved Cody. And I tell kids all the time when I talk to them in schools that, you know, we love our pets and we love our favorite toy. And it's sad to say it, but our pets can be replaced, but the kids cannot. They cannot be replaced. So once you go outside, don't go back in. You know, it's just something that we really reaffirm with the kids, to stay outside, get an adult, and you know, obviously call 911, but don't go back into the home.
Yeah, I think the temptation for any parent too. I mean, we love our pets. I've got 2 little kittens, and just trying to visualize how that would go down. I mean, all it takes is for them to go hide somewhere that they don't typically hide. And it's like, okay, you have maybe 10, 15 seconds. If, you know, by that point, the smoke is a foot or 2 feet into the house and you've been alerted, like, you've got to make a hard choice in that moment. And my heart goes out to any family who's lost a pet in a fire. I mean, they can be, you know, like a child, you know, they're
Absolutely.
a family member. So
Absolutely.
it's not, you know, by us having this discussion, oh, you know, don't worry about the pet, get outside. I mean, it's not an
It's
easy
hard.
thing.
It absolutely is, Jessica. And I'll tell you, I've been on many a fire where people have come up to me and said, my dog is in there, my cat is in there. And we do everything we can. We treat that just like a person. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, and we will go for the child and the adult and the person first, but we treat that pet just like a person. We go in there and we do everything we can to find them. You're absolutely right. You know, they are like a family member. I completely agree. But you know, for kids, we have to remind them that they have to be first. Let us go find them.
Yep.
Let the firemen go find them. You know, we'll do everything we can to do that. I wanted to draw attention to this video that's on the website that I'm sharing on this redcross.org. It is a really good, it's just a 2-minute video or a 2.5-minute video about fire safety and fire prevention. But they'll tell you that you have about 2 minutes to get out of the home. But something that's really important that we haven't spoken about yet is fire doubles in size every minute. So that's kind of scary, you know, when you see a fire on the stove, it's a grease fire, and you think, well, it's just in that pan. Well, it will double in size. It will get to that cabinet or it'll get to that wall and double in size every minute. So it's very important that's why it's so important that you call 911 and get us coming, because, you know, and then if you can use your extinguisher to put it out, that's awesome. But don't hesitate. Get us coming so we can help you.
Yeah, and I'm generally not a fan of smart home technology for security purposes. And I'm not saying that to judge or make people feel concerned. It's just, I don't personally feel comfortable with it. And so I bring it up because we stayed at an Airbnb in Wisconsin at one point, and they had, I think it was an in-home Alexa in the kitchen. And we were learning how to use this range. And unfortunately, we cooked the bacon a little bit too long, and the device actually said, caution, there is smoke in the kitchen, which was not the most complimentary thing ever. But, you know, it was kind of one of those things where I wonder, I don't know too much about it on the safety alert aspect, but do you happen to know if, you know, a smart device like Alexa will call the fire department?
You know, I would assume they probably can. I don't know that much about the Alexa and those type of items, but I do know that they have smoke detectors out there that talk to you now. They did a study that, you know, just a beep doesn't always necessarily wake you up, but if you had something calling your name or telling you fire, that would alert you. So just like they have smoke detectors now that will talk to you. You can pre-record things on them, you know, if it's a child's name or, you know, whoever's closest to that sprinkler, if you have it down by that bedroom, that you can do that. But again, like we spoke about earlier, they tend to be a little bit more expensive, but they have some technology out there that's changing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I feel like we just scratched the surface, and we'll have to bring you back in like late November, early December, because, you know, holiday season, I know if you talk to any fireman, you just get them talking about Christmas trees, and that's kind of a hot button. So
Right.
yeah, let's put something on the calendar to circle back on that. But
I'd happy to be a part of it. And let's end on this, Jessica. We haven't had rain. We had some rain today, which was great, but in reality, we've been in a drought. So if you've got a bonfire in your backyard, if you're watching and you've got a bonfire in your backyard, please don't light it. Any open flame outside can be dangerous. The fire department, we have started going on multiple grass fires because of that, and people with cigarettes, you know, putting their cigarette out on the ground, and it doesn't get put all the way out, and it ends up in mulch or in grass, and it's just kindling. It's catching fire really quick because everything's so dry. So just I'll end on that and say I'm happy to be a part of it. You let me know when you want to go again, and we'll get together and do it.
yeah, so I mean, just to confirm what I'm hearing, I mean, if your friend's having a backyard bonfire, you shouldn't really encourage it because of the fire, of the drought, you know, with it being an open flame. So it doesn't take much.
They should be checking with their fire marshal before they even light the fire anyway. and they would let them know that they shouldn't do it. But sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes people don't ask, and they think, well, I've got a fire pit, it's a metal cage, and I'm going to be standing there. Well, if you watch the embers take off, and next thing you know, they're in their neighbor's yard, and now your neighbor's leaves are on fire, or their leaves in their gutters on fire. So it's just best to wait until we can get some rain and get through this drought.
Yeah. I think there was a field fire yesterday in northern Boone County.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, well, Greg, thank you so much for your time. This has been incredibly informative. And for those of you with questions, where should they go?
So you can go to wfdfire.org. To our website. We have access to, I'll click on it right here. You can see that we have all kinds of safety videos. There's Halloween safety, close your door before you do those, kitchen fire safety, escape plans. And we also give out smoke detectors. So for those who live in Whitestown, if you don't have a smoke detector and you're not able to purchase one for yourself, you can contact us and we can get you a smoke detector. If you need help installing it, we can do that as well. And we also have, there's all kinds of educational stuff on here that talk about the fire department, from car seat installation to, just safety videos in general.
Oh, this is wonderful. And I can't stress enough the close before you doze one. There was an article and a video that circulated a couple of years ago where it's amazing the difference, a home and a fire or a fire in a home where the doors are open versus closed, and the difference is dramatic. So
absolutely.
Anyway, Greg, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for making yourself available. And for all of you, I hope you find this information valuable and take the tips that he's relayed with importance. Do put something in your calendar to check those smoke alarms. And obviously, if you need a smoke alarm, Greg mentioned Whitestown has them. If you're not local to Whitestown, Greg mentioned earlier that any local fire department has that same resource available, or could probably connect you with one that does. So
absolutely.
Anyway, Greg, thank you so much. And everybody have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Jessica.
Bye.